Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Today we have a guest speaker with us. I am honored to be able to call him a good friend, someone who I went to school with. As you see here, Mr. Tom Flunker is the director of the Diversity Center at Gustavus Adolphus down in St. Peter. A little bit about him. He lives in Mankato, has been living there for about 10 years. He served as a teacher and elementary school educator and coach and also principal in Milwaukee. He also taught Spanish in Appleton, spent 8 years as the Intercultural Center Coordinator and Admissions Counselor at Bethany Lutheran College. He also served as director of Cato Public Charter Schools in Mankato. He grew up on the island of Puerto Rico, has a bachelor's degree from Dr. Martin Luther College, now MLC, and also a master's degree in psychology from Walden University. Married, 3 boys, and is also uncle to Zach Arndt. One of the reasons he's here today is because he really has a passion for areas of diversity. He has also a passion for just simply how we can continue to grow and be educated. On his bio, he has the famous line from Dr. Martin Luther King, "The time is always right to do what is right." It's my honor to present Mr. Tom Flunker.
No, not gonna lie. This is different. Being able to spin around. I'm not gonna do any dance moves, but I'll spin around for you. Thank you for this welcome. It's a privilege for me and a blessing for me to be here this morning to talk with you. I think what we're gonna do this morning is we're gonna start off with prayer, and then we'll sing a couple verses of the hymn before we get jump started with the message. So if you would just bow your heads for a second and just join me in prayer. Dear Lord, as we navigate these days of uncertainty, we would like to focus our attention this morning on what it is that you have in terms of a purpose for us in this world. Be with us this morning as we contemplate and we ponder and we think about ways in which we can be more fruitful in our work and our thoughts and our activities in our lives as we journey towards your glory. Be with us this morning as we think about these things, and help us, strengthen us in our faith, so that as we leave here today, we're more intentional about serving you. Through your name we pray. Amen. This morning we're going to sing 3 verses of the hymn, "May the Mind of Christ My Savior." So please join me. I know that there are tons of passages that we could focus on this morning that actually get you in the frame of mind of cultural diversity, talking about the world and all the people that are a part of this world. But I think this morning I want you to actually focus about diversity in a slightly different way, okay? So I actually chose this passage because for me, a lot of the things that I do don't necessarily always focus on what people look like and the backgrounds that people bring to the table, but I'm focusing on what I want people to actually focus on when it comes to the end result, okay? We have a lot of things in life that we have to think about on a regular basis, and I know that diversity is an important thing, and that's why I do what I do. But I think when it comes down to it, to refocus our attention on what our purpose is in this world is even more important. And this is something that is really important to me in terms of my thought processes when I'm talking with people, when I'm meeting with students, when I'm talking with other staff members and faculty. These things are important to me because I walk through life with this as my focus. So the title this morning, I gave it a theme, and the theme is, "There by God's grace go I." This passage is taken from Colossians 4, verse 6, and it reads, "Let your speech always be with grace, as though seasoned with salt, so that you would know how you should respond to each person." What I would like you to do this morning, and I apologize because I actually had a short presentation. I didn't have tons of slides, but I had a short presentation, and because of the craziness of yesterday, I actually left it in my office. I live in Mankato, Minnesota, but I work at Gustavus in St. Peter, so going back to my office takes about 20 minutes. So I would like you to think for a second and raise your hand if you think about your birth on a regular basis. Not only your birth, but maybe even think about the first year or so of your life. How many of you, on a weekly basis, think about your birth or think about the first year of your life? Raise your hand if you do. Really? None of you do? What's up with that? That's probably one of the most important elements of your life is, how things got jump-started. Okay? Well, maybe in terms of a month, how many of you think about the first year of your life during the month? We got one in the back, maybe one, kind of, sort of, okay. A few more people, all right. During the course of a week, how many of you hear the word intentionality? How many of you heard it this week? Intentionality, raise your hand. A few people, okay, a few people did. So that's what I'm going to actually focus on for a second, because I just asked you to think about, back to your childhood, your birth, that first year of your life, and some of you obviously don't think about that very much. Maybe things will change later on. But I'm going to do that for you for a second, just so you have kind of an understanding of my background and my journey, right, and why I actually do the things that I do and how I think. So I was born, obviously. Then, I'm going to say at about the age of 9 months, the Flunker family swooped in and said, "We want Tom." My name wasn't Tom at the time, but that didn't matter. And then after they swooped in and adopted me, then we moved to Kansas. I was born in Iowa, by the way. Okay, I was actually born here in the States. I don't know anything else about Iowa except for that I was born there. We moved to Kansas, lived there till I was about 4 years old. Then my father, adoptive father, who was a pastor in Kansas, took a call, and so we ended up moving to Mexico. And then after about half a year, 3/4 of a year in Mexico, then we moved to Puerto Rico. And that's basically where the majority of my childhood was. Even in high school, I came back to the States for high school, but I'd go home for break, okay? So that kind of gives you an idea of just a rough start, okay? Tom, adopted, born in Iowa, moved to Kansas, moved to Mexico, moved to Puerto Rico, part of the Flunker family. My dad's a pastor. Came back to the States for good when I started college. Went to, at the time, DMLC. And that's where things really started to come into focus for me, okay? Now, other than a couple of details in there about my life, was there anything in there that makes you think about the word diversity? Was there anything in that makes you think about diversity? Anyone? Raise your hand if you have a, yep. Adopted? Okay, so there's a connection, right? Some people consider that to be a part of diversity. Some people are like, that's something else, right? Anybody in here have that experience? Any of you adopted? Feel free to raise your hand if you are. I'm a flunker through and through. I'm going to tell you that right now. I have no problems with that, okay? All right, a couple people on that side. All right, anybody else? That little connection there, yep. White people and corn, okay? White people and corn. Hey, you know what? How many of you thought that? How many of you thought that? Raise your hand, come on. All right, white people and corn. Here's the interesting thing about that, okay? So, Mexico and then Puerto Rico, right? So I have an older brother. He's not adopted. And Tim, I'm Tom, he's Tim. See how that works? I know. Let it go. When it was time for us to choose a high school, my dad gave us a list of Lutheran high schools in the States, right? And then we got to choose from any of those high schools. It would preferably be better if they had a dorm, because Puerto Rico is a long ways away from the United States, right? And it's not easy. I mean, I grew up surfing, I'll tell you that right now, but it's not easy to do surfing to Puerto Rico back to the States. It takes a little bit of time. People just ask me, why didn't you just drive? Well, that's a little difficult. So he looked at all the high schools on that list, right? And, you know, if you think about it, we have high schools throughout the United States. Some of them didn't exist at that time, but there was still a nice list. And he goes, I want to go to Nebraska Lutheran. How many of you have been to Nebraska Lutheran? Where is Nebraska Lutheran? Waco is massive, isn't it? Waco's massive. 360 people when school's in session, I think. All right? So, there wasn't a whole lot to do there. I went there for 4 years. Right? So, you said, white people and corn. What do you do on weekends? Have any of you played Rambo? I've played Rambo. That was one of the games we made up. We found old abandoned farmhouses and just went to town. It was crazy. I'm surprised I'm still alive. Okay, but we played Rambo. That was interesting. I learned a lot of stuff. I'm not going to lie, I learned a lot of stuff. I learned how to farm. Bet you didn't know that, did you? Bet you didn't know I've driven a combine. Yeah, I know what a swather is. Okay? When I tell people that, they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. I've detasseled corn. I was actually a supervisor for detasseling corn. So that's fun, right? White people and corn. So, here's another thing. You're going to add a couple things to this. And by the way, we'll get to this. But I need to set this background for you because I want you to think about diversity this morning in a very different way. Okay? One thing leads to the next. And some of you told me that, you know, this first year of your life didn't really have anything to do with you. or you haven't thought about it. I shouldn't say that you didn't have anything to do with it. Obviously it does. But Nebraska Lutheran, those 4 years for me were extremely important in my journey, okay? But let me tell you something, though. I'm going to jump back from that. I'm going to tell you a few other things that happened, which made me who I am, okay? The Lord had a plan. But then I'm going to jump back, because some of the stuff from the beginning parts of my life I didn't really share with you yet. And it wasn't until you get a little bit older and you start thinking about, your beginnings that you start to realize that it actually is more impactful than you think, right? So during those years in Nebraska Lutheran, some of the years I would, go home to Puerto Rico, visit with my friends, paint the house 2 times, because they painted the house 1 time, and then my parents moved, and then I had to paint the next time I went home. But the years that I didn't go home, or the summers I didn't go home, you figure out other things to do. So one summer I spent a summer out in Colorado, western Colorado, okay, ranch country. So that summer I could write a book about. I'm not gonna lie, that summer alone I could write a book about. How many of you have been chased by animals before? Raise your hand, okay? All right, what's the worst animal that you've been chased by? Don't tell me, dog. Everybody gets chased by a dog. Okay? What's the worst animal you can think of, some of you? Okay, in the back? Yeah. A chicken. I did say the worst animal, right? All right, chicken. We'll go with that. Steer. Okay. Bigger. I don't know how it compares to a chicken, though. I've seen that. Okay. Your brother. Yep. You just moved up. A bear cub. Okay, we're getting closer. You and I should talk. All right, so one more? Anybody else? Go ahead. You win. Okay, you win. So, all right. So that summer, think about this for a second, okay? All summer long, learning how to ranch, and I'm telling you, when I moved out there for that summer, they actually dressed the part. We're talking cowboy boots, hats, stirrups, the whole shebang, okay? I grew up riding bareback. I didn't even know how to put a saddle on because I never had done that before. I'd ridden a horse, but I had never done that. So you get to a certain part of the summer where they call it driving the cattle, where you're not driving at all. You're riding a horse down the middle of the road and keeping all the cattle in line, right? And it's out in western Colorado, so there's plenty of tourists, right? So let me paint the picture for you. You got about 8 people. 7 of them are dressed like cowboys or ranchers. And then there's this dude with camouflage shorts, high tops, and hat on backwards and shades. And people would get out of their cars or their RVs, and they're taking pictures, and then they'd be like, and I'm like, yeehaw. That summer, I got chased by 5 different animals. I got kicked and run over by another 3. Okay? So, I'm with you on that bear thing. I got chased by Mama Bear. She wasn't happy. Okay? We were up in a 4-H pack trip up in the mountains, and we were taking a little break, and I was retightening my saddle because I wasn't good at that. And somebody goes, "Oh, look at that! 2 bear cubs are playing," and we're all like, "Oh!" And then all of a sudden somebody goes, "Ah!" Now, these guys ride for a living, so they know how to get on horses ways I can't even imagine, right? So they come running and they're hopping and doing all this crazy stuff. And I'm like just making sure that just put my foot in, get about this far, and the entire thing goes, right? Legs up in the air. I will share this with you. 2 times in my life this happened. And for those of you who have froze, this is important. Because I know that in my childhood, I probably skipped a lot of concussions because I had a fro. I'm not kidding, because I was kind of I did a lot of crazy stuff. So I'm on my back, my foot is stuck in the air, and my horse sees Mama Bear coming. Yeah. Horse takes off. I'm still on my back, by the way. Now, let me explain something about mountains. Some parts have trails, not this part. So I'm on my back, horse is running through the woods. All the other guys have taken off, and I'm on my back, just kind of bouncing as we go through the woods on the journey of a lifetime, right? So my fro is very important because it saved my head. 2 guys came back. One grabbed the reins of my horse, and one guy grabbed me. Because, they do these crazy stuff because they do rodeos and stuff. So he kind of flips over on his side. He grabs my collar. Guess what else he grabbed? Go ahead. My fro. So he pulls me up. Now, I said 2 guys came back, right? What's the problem with what I just said? Half of me is on one horse, and the other half is still stuck to my horse. And we take off because Mama Bear's still coming. So I don't have any scars to prove it, but I took out some little trees. Right? I did. I have to tell that story. I kind of have to, because there are things that you experience in life that you just have to share, right? So yeah, that was one of the big ones of my summer. And when you get chased by a bear, you don't forget it. Kind of like when you get chased by an alligator, you don't forget it either. But okay, so bear, beaver, mama pig. I got kicked by a horse. Guess you're not supposed to come up from behind. That's not a good thing. I thought because I played football that you could tackle small bulls when they don't listen to you. That didn't work out too well. I'm like, oh no, it's just like going after a 300-pound guy. No, it's not. No, it's not. I got chased by, okay, this goes along with yours. I got chased by a squirrel in the zoo too. I got chased. So, here's the thing. During the course of my life, if you think back to the beginnings, and they're humble beginnings, and I'm blessed to have gone through what I did. I mean, the adoption part of it, I didn't really think much about that. I consider myself to be part of the Flunker family. I really do. I have a younger brother who's adopted too. He's Puerto Rican. And he and I don't view adoption in the same way. So he's kind of gone off in his own way, whereas I'm probably more like my father than all the other biological siblings in my family. That's just a fact. My parents have told me, that's why I know. Okay? So all these things are taking place in my life. I mean, I just shared with you some of the crazy ones, that have taken place, and that's just one summer, okay? But I truly believe that all of the experiences that I've gone through have completely molded me in a way, and then the fact that I grew up in this family has molded me in a way that I actually view what I do with diversity in a completely different way. Because back in the day, I didn't even think about diversity as being an important thing. It really didn't mean anything to me growing up, okay? I'm adopted, I know that. I'm part of the Flunker family, I know that. It's cool that we live in Puerto Rico, yeah. We come back to the States on furlough. That's cool. All these things are cool. But see, here's the thing. You get to a certain age of your life, and then things start to happen. And I think a lot of the things that happen with diversity and inclusivity and equity nowadays aren't stemming from the things that I told you about. Okay? So that's not exactly what started this change in my mindset in terms of pursuing diversity and working with different populations. It had a lot to do with who I am as a person, and I use that, but that's not what did it, okay? I think a lot of the things that I've gone through later on in life started to wake me up to the fact that sin is definitely a part of this world, okay? And those things didn't really matter to me before in the same way. But then I started to recognize that, yes, sin is a part of this world in the way people treat you sometimes. And I understand that all of us have different backgrounds. All of us come from different walks of life. And whether you're a person of color or you're white, you've had some challenges. I know you have. But we view challenges in a different way. I know that too. But some of the things that I went through started to affect me in a different way. All right? I was on a 7-year plan at DMLC, and a lot of it wasn't actually due to things that I had done, to be honest with you. I'm not saying that I was an A student, because I wasn't. All right? But there was a lot of things that I went through during those college years. There was a time where, after being in and out of school for the first 5 years, one year, 5 of us decided, you know what, we're going to leave and just move to Mankato. And we did. And that year, all I did was work and tried to figure out life, right? Because all these things now are starting to come into my head. Some of the realities of discrimination, biases, inequality, all those things were a part of this too, okay? You know, me being one of the few African Americans that were in New Ulm at the time, some of the things were not intended to be harmful, but you know what I mean. It's one of those things where somebody says something to you and you're like, where did that come from? No matter who you are, you know what that is, okay? Because I'm venture to say that most of you have experienced that. But then I started to have conversations with people about how these things were affecting them, okay? And the negative effects of discrimination and racism and prejudices and biases and inequality and things like that. And that started to change my mind about a lot of stuff during my college years. And I'll be honest with you, I had no intentions on going to DMLC in the first place. I really didn't. I had a scholarship to go play football at Fort Hays State in Kansas. That's where I was going to go. But the Lord has a way of changing your mind, sometimes forcefully. Right after my junior year of high school, that summer that I was spending time on that farm in Nebraska, I rolled a truck 7 times. That was the second time, by the way, somebody actually pulled me by my fro. That's how he got me out of the back of the truck. We were fine. Because, we were out of work for quite some time. There was another guy that was in the truck with me. But we actually, for all intents and purposes, we were fine. I mean, we had bruises and scratches and stuff like that, and you can still see where, my hand went through the windshield right here. But, healed up enough, went back to school for my senior year. I actually played that year. I just had a plastic cap covering this so that, I could take the impact. But I other than just being sore, really, and scratched up, I didn't feel any different. That changed the summer of my senior years when it set in. And I was working out, and I'm getting ready to go to Kansas for, preseason. And that's when the injury set in. And just to avoid, going into more detail, I lost the ability to walk for a while. And so that's actually how I ended up at DMLC because, I knew I wasn't going to be able to play. I lost a scholarship. I actually rehabbed for, it was about 2 years, actually, a year and a half, 2 years. And so, like I said, I had no intentions on becoming a teacher. But the things that I was talking about before, the comments that were made, and just the little microaggressions and things like that, that made me move to Mankato, gave me a year to actually start really thinking about this stuff in a different way, okay? So I didn't know that I was going to go back to DMLC afterwards. I spent that entire year, but I realized that at the end of that year, I had gone from my football weight of 225 down to 183 pounds. And that's when I realized, you know what, I think God has a different plan for me. So I went back to school. 2 years, get done. So, where's the first place that I end up? Mind you, I grew up in an island, right? Surrounded by Spanish, okay? My connections with a broader population were basically white, Puerto Rican. My first call was to Milwaukee. And 2 years as 5th and 6th grade teacher, athletic director, and then all of a sudden my principal left. And I was visiting my folks in Brazil. That's where they live now. And suddenly, I come back after being on a break for a month and realize that I have a call. Nobody decided to call me in Brazil. They decided to wait till I got back. That was kind of interesting. But I had a call to be a principal. Really? Do you remember my first year teaching? Oof. Things like that. Did that for 6 years. What a blessing. Challenge, a blessing. Took a call up to Appleton, Wisconsin. Taught Spanish, high school Spanish, coached football, track, 6 years. And then Bethany came knocking on my door. They said, you know what? Remember all the things that you were talking about and you did and your life and things like that. You should come and do this. You should recruit. You should help our students that come from different backgrounds. So I go and do that.